Good day, fellow researchers. In this video lesson, I will discuss on mixed methods research. Mixed method studies, which combine quantitative and qualitative methods, have been receiving increased attention in recent years. So, what is mixed methods research? Mixed methods research involves the use of both quantitative and qualitative methods in a single study. People who conduct this kind of study contend that using both approaches together yields a more thorough grasp of research challenges than using either strategy alone. The question is why we should do why do mixed methods research? Mixed methods research has several strengths. First, mixed method research can help to clarify and explain relationships found to exist between variables. For example, a correlational data may indicate a slight negative relationship between the time that the students spend at home utilizing a computer and their academics. So you can then say that students' grades declined as their computer use grew. Using mixed methods research, you will be able to explain why such a relationship exists. Second, mixed methods research allows us to explore relationships between variables in depth. In this situation, qualitative methods may be used to identify the important variables in an area of interest. These variables may then be quantified in an instrument that is then administered to large numbers of individuals, and the variables can then be correlated with other variables. The third reason why do mixed methods research is it can help to confirm or cross-validate relationships discovered between variables, as when quantitative and qualitative methods are compared to see if they converge on a single interpretation of a phenomenon. Well, if they do not converge, the reasons for the lack of convergence can also be investigated. At this point, you might wonder why all research problems are not addressed using mixed methods design. Several drawbacks exist. First, mixed method studies are often extremely time-consuming and expensive to carry out. And second, many researchers are experienced in only one type of research. To conduct a mixed methods study properly, one needs expertise in both types of research, both quanti and quali. Such knowledge develops over a long period of time. In fact, a single researcher may not be able to complete a mixed methods study due to the resources, time, and effort needed. If several researchers, each with different area of expertise, collaborate, these advantages can be overcome. However, a single researcher would generally be better suited conducting a purely quantitative or a purely qualitative if they lack the necessary time, resources, and expertise. Now let's talk about what are the types of mixed methods design. While it is possible to combine qualitative and quantitative approaches in any way that is appropriate to answer a given research issue, we will focus on a few common mixed methods designs. We have the exploratory design, the explanatory design, and the triangulation design. So each entails a mixture of both qualitative and quantitative or numerical data. First, we have the exploratory design. In this approach, researchers first use a qualitative method to discover the important variables underlying a phenomenon of interest and to inform a second, the quantitative method. So in this approach, researchers first employ qualitative to identify the key factors behind a phenomena and to inform a subsequent quantitative procedure. Then they look for connections between these factors. This style of design is frequently applied when creating surveys or rating scales intended to assess a variety of interesting topics. The results from the qualitative phase inform the quantitative method in the exploratory design, and the quantitative findings are utilized to support or build upon the qualitative findings. So in the exploratory design, data analysis is done separately for the first qualitative and second quantitative phases of the study. The rationale underlying the exploratory design is to explore a phenomenon or to identify important themes. In addition, it is especially useful when one needs to develop and test a particular type of instrument. The second one is the explanatory design. So a researcher first carries out a quantitative method and then uses a qualitative method to follow up and refine the quantitative findings. So a researcher may do a quantitative study on occasion, but the results may need to be supplemented with other data. This is the reason why the explanatory design was created, because in this approach, the researcher initially does a quantitative method followed by a qualitative method to confirm and expand on the quantitative results. The results of the qualitative analysis are used by the researcher to supplement the findings of the quantitative investigation. So the two forms of data are separately assessed. The third one is the triangulation design. In the triangulation design, the researcher uses both quantitative and qualitative methods to study the same phenomenon to determine if the two converge upon a single understanding of the research problem being investigated. If not, the researcher must investigate why the two approaches provide disparate results. All data are collected simultaneously using quantitative and qualitative approaches, and they can be examined together or independently. In order to examine both types of data, it could be necessary to turn the qualitative studies data into quantitative data or the quantitative data into qualitative data. So the convergence or divergence of the result would then be examined if the data were analyzed independently. The basic justification for using the triangulation design is that the strengths of the two methodologies will balance out each other's shortcomings. Now let's discuss other mixed methods research design issues. First, a factor that can be used to categorize mixed methods design is the presence or absence of an advocacy lens. An advocacy lens occurs when the researcher's worldview implies that the purpose of research is to advocate for the improved treatment of research participants in the world outside research. So feminist theories based on racial categories, and critical theory are a few examples of worldviews that incorporate an advocacy lens. So we have discussed the major mixed methods designs as if there were no advocacy lens present. However, each design can be approached with an explicit advocacy lens. On sampling, qualitative researchers typically use purposive sampling. Usually samples are small, the intent being that a comparatively small number of individuals can provide a considerable amount of detailed and in-depth information that large samples will not. Quantitative researchers typically want to choose individuals who are representative of a larger population so that the results can be generalized to that population. So that's the difference between the qualitative and quantitative sampling. So now let's proceed to mixed model studies. Tashakuri and Tedley define mixed model studies as those that combine the qualitative and quantitative approaches within several different phases of the research process. This can entail conducting an experimental research, gathering qualitative data, transforming the data into statistics, and then quantitatively analyzing the results. So, the quantitative and qualitative approach to research may be addressed during each of the three phases of the research process. Number one, the type of investigation, whether it is confirmatory, so it's typically quantitative, versus exploratory, which is typically qualitative. Another phase is that quantitative data collection and operations versus qualitative data collection and operations. And lastly, the third is on statistical analysis and inference versus the qualitative analysis. In conducting mixed method study, several steps are advised. And the first one is a researcher must develop a clear rationale for doing a mixed methods study. A researcher should ask himself or herself why both quantitative and qualitative methods are needed to investigate the problem at hand. If the reasoning is not clear, then a mixed method study may not be appropriate. The second one is a researcher must develop research questions for both qualitative and quantitative methods. In many instances, the formation of a general research question can lead to the development of some individual research hypotheses, some of which may lend themselves to a quantitative approach, and some of which may require a qualitative method. In conducting a mixed method study, a researcher must decide if a mixed method study is feasible. Mixed method studies, by their very nature, require the researcher or research team to be experienced in both quantitative and qualitative research methods. It is rare that a single individual would have all the requisite skills necessary to conduct a mixed methods research study. So there must be a consideration. So you have to ask yourself, do I have the time, energy, and resources required to carry out such study? It should be the first concern for anyone thinking about conducting a mixed method study. If not, are you able to work with individuals who possess the knowledge and abilities that you lack? It may be preferable to reconceive a study as primarily quantitative or qualitative investigation if you lack the requisite resources or expertise than to start a mixed method study that cannot be finished in the time allotted. Number 4, determine the mixed methods design most appropriate to the research question or questions. So there are essentially 3 mixed methods design from which a researcher can choose. So as we previously noted, So when a researcher is attempting to determine whether qualitative and quantitative approaches to an issue converge on a single understanding of the issue, then a triangulation strategy is advised or applicable. If one wants to employ qualitative data to supplement the conclusions of a quantitative investigation, then the explanatory design is acceptable, or vice versa. When one is aiming to initially discover the pertinent factors that may underlie a phenomenon, and then subsequently examine the correlations among these variables, or when information is required to help construct quantitative instruments, the exploratory design is acceptable. Number 5, collect and analyze the data. Depending on the specific methods employed, all mixed method studies can use the same data collecting and analysis methodologies. The distinction between the distinction involves the collection and analysis of two distinct types of data. What are these? Sometimes sequentially, as in exploratory and explanatory, and sometimes simultaneously, as in triangulation design. Number 6, write up the results in a manner consistent with the design being used. In writing up the results of a mixed method study, the ways in which the data were collected and analyzed are usually integrated in a triangulation design, but they are treated separately for exploratory and explanatory designs. Not just mixed methods, no, research, but all research need evaluation due to the fact that mixed method studies usually use two different phases of analysis, and they always include both quantitative and qualitative data. In effective mixed methods research, these two techniques should either work in concert or cover various sub-questions that are connected to the main research issue. So the first thing that you need to ask yourself is, ask yourself if both qualitative and quantitative data played a role in conclusions or in the conclusions reached. And number 2, no, you have to ask yourself if the study contains threats to internal validity, as quantitative researchers refer to it, or credibility, as qualitative researchers refer to it. So are there alternative explanations for the findings beyond those given by the author? What steps have been taken to ensure that the design is tight and that high levels of internal validity and credibility have been achieved? You have to consider those questions. Are there alternative explanations for the findings? What steps have been taken to ensure that the design is tight with high levels of internal validity and credibility? That's number 2. The third one is ask yourself about the generalizability, or as quantitative researchers refer to it, or transferability, as qualitative researchers refer to it, of the results. Are there, you need to ask yourself, do the results found in the present study extend beyond the domain studied to other contexts and other individuals? Is the description of the qualitative results sufficient to determine if they would be useful to other researchers in other situations? The answers to these questions are essential. Why? Because a study without generalizability or external validity or transferability is of little interest to anyone other than the author of the study. And finally, on ethics in mixed methods research, mixed method studies are affected by ethical issues in the same way that other types of research that we have identified and explored are. So the three of the most important and crucial: 1. Protecting the participant identity. 2. Treating participants with respect. And 3. Protecting participants from both physical and psychological harm. In conclusion, it is clear that the mixed methods research are more prevalent now in the educational settings research. The advantages of each strategy for a large degree to make up for the shortcoming of the other. While mixed methods research approaches have the potential to be very appealing, you should know more about it and you should approach them with the knowledge that they demand: number 1, a lot of time; 2, effort; and 3, resources to complete successfully. Again, you should approach them with the knowledge that they demand a lot of time, effort, and resources to complete successfully. And that ends my discussion on mixed methods research. The reference will be posted at the end of the video. Thank you.